Number 5. Spree. Coming in first on our list is the newest release and a new age classic that I think give it a few years will get the recognition. Spree. It was called American Psycho for the digital age, and I think that fits. Spree stars Joe Keery of Stranger Things and Joe fame, putting down the baseball bat and the hair gel and sitting behind the wheel of a rideshare service, playing a down on his luck young man named Kurt who wants nothing more than to be a viral famous social media star. Very relatable. But in a sea of unboxing videos, react TikToks, let's plays, confession videos, hashtag challenges, apologies, and top 5 videos about horror movies, Kurt struggles to find any sort of audience for his content whatsoever and decides that the best way to stand out on the internet is to live stream himself snuffing his passengers he picks up in his rideshare app. Okay, to each their own. I'll stick to doing YouTube videos, you do you. Now, Spree is not the smartest movie out there. The social satire is a little basic, to be honest, and it could have done with a lot more fleshing out on its commentary on social media addiction and internet validation, but it makes for a very solid foundation for a flick. It's got a plot that probably would have made for an okay Black Mirror episode, and maybe this movie wouldn't have worked as well if it wasn't for how fun Joe Keery is. Maybe I'm extremely biased because I love the guy, and because like most of the Western world, Steve Harrington is the only reason I watch Stranger Things, but he brings a super fun mania to the social media addicted lunatic. The American Psycho comparison, definitely apt. That's one of my absolute favorite movies of all time for just how sick and entertainingly evil Patrick Bateman is. You know he's the most reprehensible, unlikable character ever put to film, but Christian Bale is just so damn charismatic you love him. And that's what's happening here. Joe Keery somehow manages to be both convincing as a really scary psychopath, but also oddly sympathetic and earnest. It's the desperation. Have you ever seen a man soaked head to toe in blood, shaking and quivering after doing something unspeakable, and he's still asking you to subscribe to his channel? And speaking of vapid, deranged, dead-eyed internet personalities looking for fame, if you're looking for more scary movie reviews, ghosts, goblins, and aliens, well, click through to Top 5 Scary and subscribe. We've got loads more content with me behind the wheel, but not really. I can't drive. Look at me. I just skate. Number 4. VHS. VHS eventually exploded into a mega hit franchise. I think there's 5 or 6 of them, not even including spin-offs, but it all comes back to the daring original. VHS was a collection of horror movie shorts, all under the same theme of bizarre found footage horror, and the result is electric. It's like getting to sit at home for your own private horror movie film festival. Now, the collections of shorts featured were all directed by, at the time, fairly underground independent horror movie directors, but now looking back at it, it's like they've assembled a really impressive pantheon of rising horror legend. We got stuff from Adard Wingard, who gave us You're Next in the 2016 Blair Witch reboot, which was okay. We got one from David Bruckner, who would go on to direct The Ritual in the 2022 Hellraiser. And we've got T.I. West, who would make the A24 darling Pearl. So it's a film with nothing but wall-to-wall talent and creativity at their best. It also made the format of being an anthology movie part of the plot of the movie itself, which I thought was very meta and juicy. A group of career crooks film themselves committing violent and vile acts, and hey, I wonder if they knew the guy from the first movie. And they are commissioned to heist a single object, a mysterious VHS tape. The guys break into the house and find the tape, and the movie is them watching it and then cutting back to whatever strange mystery is happening with the criminals. It's very inventive, it's very immersive, it's very, very cool. Now, all the segments are really cool, but I want to shout out the shorts Tuesday the 17th for being a very high concept idea for a horror movie I can't say I've seen elsewhere, and I can't even say too much without giving it away, but it uses the VHS format really fun. And another shout out for Something Strange Happened to Emily when she was younger. Again, very inventive. It's told exclusively through video calls and the internet, and it features a hearty dose of medical body horror, wild twists, and just like the tiniest little bit of alien stuff. Just a little bit. Number 3, Lake Mungo. Okay, let's go back to another lesser known one with Lake Mungo. This one's an Australian feature, came out around 2008. Lake Mungo is a healthy, hearty dose of scares and thrills and heart-wrenching family drama. Horror and family drama go hand in hand like the girl from Hereditary and a stop sign. Too soon? That was too far? That was too far? That was too far. In Lake Mungo, we're in the perspective of Matthew Palmer, a young man who has been depressed and broken shortly after his sister's drowning shattered his family's well-being and mental health. However, Matthew begins to see signs of his sister everywhere, feeling her presence in the house with him, and mostly because he keeps seeing her ghost all around. He sets up a surveillance camera system all over their house and begins making a documentary about his experience hunting for his sister and closure. As the investigation as to whether or not his sister really is haunting them, Matthew ends up uncovering family secrets that were long thought buried and finds himself haunted by his sister's loss in a way much grander than any ghost story could. Now, what I really like about this one is pretty much right up until credits, you'll be asking yourself what's happening. Not in a confusing way, like an Inception sort of thing. It's just got a bunch of fun and clever twists that kind of keep you guessing the entire film, keep you asking questions. The film uses the medium well. It allows the audience to go on this journey with the family, where you're there with them and you're asking too what's happening, if it's really a haunting or if it's all just a sad family wanting to see their daughter one last time. It honestly ends up being really heartwarming in a bizarre way. You don't see a lot of horror movies that kind of get you right here. And without spoiling like too much, because I do want you to see it, unlike Hereditary, this one doesn't really have like a happy ending, but it doesn't have a horrifically sad ending. It's kind of bittersweet. It's genuinely very touching. So if you're looking for something to tug at your heartstrings a lot while also making your hair stand on end, you can't go wrong with Lake Mungo. Number 2 is Wreck. Maybe you've already seen this one because it was a smash hit commercially and critically, but if you haven't, man, come on, you really oughta. Wreck is found footage stuff at its best, putting you smack dab in the POV of the action, and it makes you feel like you're both part of this horrifying nightmare, but also kind of like you're like an FBI agent watching evidence recovered years after the fact in a dark room. Wreck follows a film crew that's recording something when they find themselves caught in a way bigger story. When a neighbor attacks someone and bites them, police quarantine off a building for an unknown reason, and you get to experience it all go down in first person as more and more people inside the building seem to be turning into something a little rabid, vicious, and more than a little undead. Wreck does zombies 28 Days Later style, with a pretty interesting twist that I won't give away if you still haven't seen it. They're fast, violent, and unpredictable, and it makes for a super entertaining movie watching the protagonist try and fend off a horde of undead in these really cramped, tight, claustrophobic spaces. There's a lot of excellent choreography work going on here to make sure everything fits in the frame, and the first person view of the camera really makes it feel like you are stuck in there with them too. If you let yourself get into it, you really have a good time with this one. Like, if there was ever really a zombie apocalypse happening, I think we could all agree there'd be gigabytes worth of cell phone footage to go through. So in a bizarre way, this movie about a zombie apocalypse feels oddly realistic. Even just outside of being a good found footage horror movie, Wreck is also just a super good zombie movie if you're into that sort of thing. They remade it into Quarantine for Americans a year later, but if you want my advice, skip the remake and just go for the original, and that is honestly true of like 99.9% of all horror movies anyway. Okay, before we get into number 1 properly, I wanted to cheat a little bit and break the rules of top 5. Don't tell anybody that I added some extras, but I wanted to shout out a few honorable mentions that I love that didn't make the cut. Blair Witch is going to be the first one. The original, the sequels are all iffy. Number 2 is going to be Troll Hunters. Really fun monsters. Yeah. Paranormal Activity, it's pretty good. It's not super my thing, but it's pretty good. And finally, wanted to shout out Host really quick. It's about a seance that happens on Zoom, just came out, very modern. Okay, there we go. So number 1 on the list is going to be Creep. It's got nothing to do with Radiohead. Sorry. Coming to us from Patrick Bryce and indie darling Mark Duplass, he takes a break from earnestly mumbling through an indie movie to play a completely chilling, well, the title said it, Creep. This movie is basically just watching Mark Duplass be really weird in front of a camera for an hour and 20 minutes. It's a great example of when you can do a lot more with a lot less. This movie is as absolutely bare bones as it gets. There's 2 actors in the entire movie, and they're the 2 guys who wrote and directed the movie. A struggling videographer, Aaron, gets an offer to film a series of personal diaries for a strange client, Joseph, who has an inoperable brain tumor and wants to leave a series of videos behind for his unborn child. Which does sound nice, until Aaron gets there and discovers very quickly something is really off about this, and this isn't going to be a normal job. This movie is all performance, and Duplass crushes it as the bizarre, mysterious Joseph. He plays him really, like, realistically creepy, like he's the kind of guy you'd meet on a bus and spend the rest of the day thinking about. Like, you know something is wrong with the guy, but you're not really sure in what way and just how afraid of him and how dangerous he might be until it's too late. It's a movie that really gets in your head and gets right under your skin. If you leave the movie terrified of the main character but also very enamored in equal measures, worry not, because Bryce and Duplass agree with you, since there's a Creep 2, which is apparently just as good as the first. I haven't seen it yet, you know, I only have so much time, but I should see it eventually, since there is a Creep 3 in early pre-production stages. So although this guy may be a completely unsettling weirdo, we love this creep and can't get enough. He belongs here. Number 5, 11BX137. A gadget blog named Gadgets with 2 Z's caught international viral attention after they received an exceedingly strange, mysterious CD sent to their address. The blank gold CD has a series of letters and numbers written on it, and no other markers denoting what it could be. The contents of the CD when played are very confusing to say the least, strange and downright horrifying. A hooded figure dressed like a bubonic plague doctor, standing menacingly in what looks like a burnt-out, destroyed remnant of a building. He just sorta appears to be standing and communicating in some kind of code. Wandering, posing, revealing a blinking light emanating from the palm of his hand. Its hand, maybe? This thing does kind of have SCP-049 vibes. After about a minute, the hooded figure faces the wall, where he stays for the remainder of the video. But where the video goes from creepy to I might never sleep again levels of horrifying, is that when you run the audio through a spectrogram, a fancy word for a visualization of sound, images begin to appear of tortured bodies and a chilling threat spelling out, "You are already dead." That's the kind of thing you'd love to receive in the mail unmarked. Internet sleuths the net over came together to try and uncover and unmask this nefarious figure in the terrifying video. Now, if it's any comfort for you, the images found in the spectrogram appear to be excerpts from low-rent horror movies, that people found screen captures that matched up pretty well. Speculation ran wild as to what this video could possibly mean. Was there a secret message or a threat behind its cryptic codes? Was it just an advertisement for something? Or just a bored artist trying to get somebody's attention the only way he knew how? Well, eventually, someone did come forward. A man by the name of Parker Warner Wright claims to be the plague doctor in the video, and said the reason for the video was nothing more than an art project to entertain and confuse people. Like most cryptic, scary artists, when he was asked about why the video was made, all he had to say was, "I see my work as waves on the oceans. Thanks." Number 4. I feel fantastic. Now, if you're a student in horrifying, unexplained YouTube clips and legends, perhaps you've been unfortunate enough to run into this one before. But if you haven't, I'm sorry. It's been years since I Feel Fantastic first graced the YouTube algorithm, and yet we're still no closer to understanding, uncovering what's going on here. The video is pretty short and sweet, but I doubt you'll actually be able to finish it. It's a mannequin-looking android named Tara, singing her little song for the camera. Now, she's got the chutzpah down pat, but her natural stage presence could use a little bit of work, maybe her tone too, because she kind of sings discordantly and completely terrifying. It sounds like the kind of thing that you would hear a few minutes before you wake up strapped to an ice-cold slab operating table in a dank basement. The robot, we know, was built by John Bergeron, and that's about all we know. He envisioned his beloved Tara as being an android pop sensation, kind of like what I think Grimes might be. And I really don't want to shut down Tara's career before it's blossomed, but she's got some serious hurdles to solve first. The incredibly unsettling nature of the video caused speculators to run wild with theories about what they were seeing. The most extreme ones go so far as to suggest John was a murderer, and Tara was a mannequin wearing the clothes of his victims. Some suggest he's just a very strange man who wanted a singing companion in his home. In all the years since this clip went viral, we've never got a follow-up on this bizarre video, and I doubt we're ever going to get more answers on this one. I wonder if Tara is still out there, if she's still singing proudly, or if she's rotting in a basement somewhere. I just hope she's still practicing, you know? Number 3. Croatian Stalker. Do you ever feel like someone might be watching you? I know I do. Quite a lot, although it could be because someone is watching me right now, you're watching me right now, but I also just mean in my day-to-day. It's spine-chilling to imagine that somebody's following you without you realizing for gosh knows what, and trailing you around, preventing you from feeling safe. This next video, appropriately and concisely titled Croatian Stalking Tape, is a footage of 2 men recording themselves being pursued by a masked stranger. And according to the uploader, this was the last time either of them were ever seen. The video was uploaded not by anyone in the video, but rather a third party who somehow got a hold of it. And the only evidence we can find for it is that he claims it was recorded in 2005 and is a piece of evidence in a missing persons case for these 2 individuals. In the video, we can clearly see the 2 friends, initially enjoying a night on the town together, when they're apprehended by a very strange man wearing a sack over his head. You know, normal stuff. At first, the sack-clad man appears, well, I don't want to say friendly per se, but he's not outwardly hostile. Just bizarre, slouching and bending and walking in a way that kind of intones that either it's not a human or it's a human who's had a really long night. The 2 friends then try their best to elude the pursuer, who does not seem keen on letting them go. They try to lose him by making their way to a hotel lobby, where they proceed to call for an elevator to try and find some respite from their stalker, only for the elevator door to open and show them the last thing they could have ever wanted to see, as they are face to face with the sack man, and the doors close. If the video uploader is to be believed, this could really be the last thing they ever saw. It was hard to try and find any more information about this video. I did some digging, but I couldn't get any solid answers as to where this came from, who these people were, and if they really went missing. There's some speculation that it could be a very elaborate fake, which is always a possibility. Let me know if anybody's got any intel on this one. Number 2, video dating. Hey, dating is hard. We've all been there. Let me tell you, since that Dahmer show dropped on Netflix, it's not been easy for me. In today's world, it can be so hard to meet that perfect match, especially if you're on the brink of sanity. This video, uploaded and titled Video Dating Tape, was allegedly found in the VCR purchased at a car boot sale, which, if you're not familiar with that term, it's kind of like an English flea market where you sell stuff out of your cars. The VHS is a low-quality clip of someone innocently enough trying to prevent themselves for a video dating service. It starts with a 36-year-old man, Tony, kind of awkwardly explaining what he's all about. You know how they go. We've all been there. Where it starts to get unsettling, though, is the discordant screaming that we can hear in the background. And the guy in the video seems like he's mentally degrading very fast.
Someone that can...
He starts smacking himself in the head in frustration, tripping over his words, and accidentally revealing probably a lot more than he means to. Especially when he starts to say funny, flirty little things like, "I'm looking for someone who doesn't mind disappearing for a long time," and cute little sweet nothings like, "I'm looking for someone who likes a long walk on the beach and someone I can spend the rest of their life with." Now the video is almost too perfect, you know? And the only thing that makes you wonder if maybe it's not a fake is just how convincingly creepy this 36-year-old bachelor is acting. If anyone has got some answers for this one, please let me know, because this one really did send a chill down my spine trying to watch it. And hey, if anyone wants, at the end of the video, Tony left his address if you'd like to reach out to him if you like pina coladas getting caught in the rain and want to spend the rest of your life with him. Number 1, Sad Satan. Sad Satan is a deeply mysterious, lost video game allegedly emanating from the dark web, and it's wrapped in intrigue and controversy and has all the makings of a great classic internet urban legend. The game first came into the mainstream when the owner of the now defunct Obscure Horror Corner YouTube channel was sent a link to this strange game, with the sender saying that they found it on a deep web page where users could post random files. The actual game's contents are deeply disturbing and unsettling. It truly feels like something you were never meant to see. There's not a whole lot of depth to the gameplay. It just features the player wandering down maze after maze of monochromatic hallways. A strange audio plays all around you from all sorts of sources, like an old Swedish number station, disembodied, blood-curdling screams. In some versions of the game, there are enemies that appear to be ghostly children figures standing in the maze with you. Images flash repeatedly through the gameplay, featuring pictures of notorious criminals. Audio from recordings of criminals like Charles Manson can be heard and seen. The game ends rather abruptly. If you run into any of the haunted children in the game, they'll end you and the game will be over. The mystery behind Sad Satan is arguably bigger than the game itself. Where did it come from? To date, no one truly knows who developed it or why or what their intentions even were. After the game became big thanks to the Obscure Horror Corner, there was a drove of interest in the game, leading to sinister double copies being passed around online masquerading as the real one. And these variants would include things like illegal content inside the game or dangerous malware, as users had reported that their computers would act sluggish or even outright shut down irreversibly after downloading the widely released copy. The Obscure Horror channel shut down after Sad Satan started to get attention, leading to a ton of speculation there. Was the original uploader of the video the creator of the game and he was trying to garner some sort of viral reputation for it? Or did he feel some sort of guilt or responsibility for getting this game out into the mainstream? It's been years and we're still no closer to getting any of the answers on this. Number 5, the human experiments. Now, one of the more infamous stories that has come out of the dark web is the human experiments. Now, that name alone should already tell you this is not going to be a fun one. I can't think of any fun human experiments. The site was active for a while, but possibly thankfully, seems to have gone dark around 2011. The human experiments refers to a website where where a group of anonymous doctors, medical students, and so on practice their own brand of medicine. And if the website's header is to be believed, they hope to prove that not all humans are equal, for some of them were born superior to others. So who's behind it? Government black ops, super soldier project, freelance doctors looking to practice on their own time, an incredibly convoluted and overly complicated hoax? Could not tell you. Probably for the best. I don't really know if I want to know. They say that their clientele mostly consisted of the homeless population, presumably not to arouse too much suspicion. Now their experiments range from all sorts of dealings. Some on the website listed are starvation and water fluid restriction, vivisection and pain tolerances, infectious diseases and organ effects, transfusions, drug trials, sterilizations, and I'm sure some more that aren't listed. I feel like I'm reading off the side effects for a drug commercial. Apparently, if any of their test subjects don't survive their experiments, the bodies would be dissected for further study and dumped discreetly in dumpsters around the city. Now, like most dark web stories out there, there's obviously a fair bit of scrutiny, with some people suspecting this might be a very elaborate, grisly hoax. Why someone would go to this much effort to fake something that most people aren't even going to see, I'm not sure. However, one reporter noted that the test data on the website of the hypothermia and bleach injection experiments are eerily convincing. So either it's a fake and someone did their homework, or I don't really want to think about it. And hey, if you're just looking for really good scary stories, you don't gotta go any further than where you are right now. Just hit subscribe and we'll get you a scary video or two every single day. Let's keep going. Number 4, the Red Rooms. One of the most reoccurring dark web urban legends as well is that of the Red Rooms. What is a Red Room, you ask? Well, it refers to an alleged secret streaming service or website where viewers can pay massive sums of money, usually cryptocurrency, to watch live streams of the darkest things imaginable to the human psyche, being able to make special requests for what they'd like to see. Much like the VIPs from Netflix's Squid Game, if you watched that, and I'm sure most of you did, who all traveled to that mysterious island to pay to watch the games up close and personal, this is allegedly that on a much smaller, personal scale, where you wouldn't even have to dress up in an ornate animal mask and fly out to South Korea. Now, it's worth noting that there's some discrepancy as to whether or not these horrifying red rooms really exist, or if it's an exaggerated story, like a digital campfire legend. The browser used to access deep and dark web content is too slow to run a live stream properly, and alternative browsers struggle as well as they run their traffic through multiple services. That's not to rule it out entirely. The web beneath the surface is a wild wasteland, and there have been deeply disturbing real stories from the dark web of criminals charging for pay-per-view videos of dark acts. So who's to say? I'm not about to crawl through the dark web anytime soon to find out. Number 3, swatting. Now for those of us who aren't on the internet as much, maybe you aren't super familiar with this term swatting. It has nothing to do with flies, but instead refers to the practice of obtaining a victim's IP address and then anonymously or falsely reporting serious criminal activity at the location, such as a bomb threat, hostage situation, or any other number of things that would necessitate the boys in blue packing up, getting in the van, and kicking down your door. The SWAT team shows up, kicks the front door down, ready to go, and tragically, more often than not, it ends poorly. And it happens to be a huge trend. It's even happened to celebrities like Justin Bieber and Rihanna. One of the biggest targets is gamers and streamers getting locked in vicious rivalries. Well, like many other illegal services, swatting is allegedly something you can buy through the dark web. Worried about the consequences? Don't want to spend money on an expensive trial for going to jail? Well, apparently you can hire someone to SWAT for you. One alleged website offers tiers of service ranging from mild situations to a little worse. They'll bring many people and raid them, all the way to the lofty, the SWAT team comes and from there they'll do anything. Now despite huge sentences for swatting, up to 25 years to life by the way, in case you're wondering, it's still a fairly common occurrence. Disposable phones, encrypted phone numbers, and even Skype have all been tools for the would-be swatter. As such, various law enforcement agencies across the United States have been trying to crack down on the practice as much as they can in order to dispel any would-be swatters from getting any bright ideas and to dispel any more tragedies from occurring. Number 2, bed bugs. This one is really out there, but I'm gonna be honest, it's the ones that are really out there that are the ones I'm most interested in, of course. I want to bring you the stuff you probably haven't seen in any other top 5 videos, and this was too good to pass up. On a Reddit thread asking plainly. What's your dark web story? We had this from user UrbanHawk1, who said that in his time on the dark web, he saw all manner of nefarious business, but none that truly stuck out to him more, none that was stranger than one man who was trying to acquire a massive amount of bed bugs shipped to his home. Naturally, people on the marketplace website were a bit curious. Other users on the unknown website wanted to know why exactly you'd invite that sort of thing into your home. Most of us want that out. Well, the bug collector was looking to, and paraphrasing the original Redditor's words, he wanted to try to breed bed bugs to be resistant to all the usual manner of extermination, while simultaneously breeding in a weakness that would remain secret to only him. From here, he would then unleash his genetically superior bed bugs onto the unsuspecting population, who would then have to pay him to have it dealt with, since he was the only one who knew their weakness. Now, if this one is sounding just a tiny bit comic booky to you, that's because similar schemes were also the plot of the villains of the Amazing Spider-Man movie and the Michael Bay Ninja Turtles. Now, unfortunately, there's no follow-up to this. I couldn't really find a second source on this anywhere, and Urban Hawk's story is the only time I ever saw this particular anecdote mentioned, but it was too interesting to pass up. You have to wonder, maybe Urban Hawk, the guy who posted about it, maybe he was the bedbug mastermind looking to see if there was any interest in the business. We may never know, but I'm definitely feeling itchy just talking about it. And number 1, we see you. Our next story comes to us from a Reddit user going by the handle FakeFakington. So, all that being said, maybe just take whatever he says with a grain of salt if that's how he chooses to advertise. Making matters more confusing, he does list his real name on his Reddit account as Truth Realtime. So who's to say? Now, TruthFakington, Fake Truth, he recounts the story of the early days of the dark web, when everything was still very deep and dark. Back in the day, Fakey Truthy was browsing random links, just like us kids today still do. He describes a lot of it as not particularly interesting, until he found sort of an early blog, describing random thoughts, musings, and so on. But he said they felt a bit like someone was trying to pass secret notes to each other. So, curious, he wanted to know more about what he was reading, and he compiled the IPs from the various messages and writings to try and get a better understanding about what he had found. Now, he said he made his way through a digital rabbit hole to find himself in a collection of medical records, the sort of thing that a psychologist or a therapist might keep, perhaps. The images were mostly of faxes and predominantly medical, but also military in nature too. As he was browsing through all of the files he had just uncovered, he noticed a new one had uploaded as he was browsing through them, the timestamp on the upload listing the exact minute he was browsing. The message was named, spine-chillingly, "Hello there. Infinitely braver than I would be." Mr. Fake Truthington opened up the file and saw that it was nothing but plain text that read out, "We see you." And about 15 seconds later, the server dropped altogether. Now, Fake Fakington is still around today. He's still an avid Redditor and tech head and was able to bring us this story, but no doubt that one little incident probably kept him awake for a few nights and probably kept him away from the dark web for a bit. I know I would.
Number 5 on this list is Fixed Match Buy-In. Fixed Match Buy-In is a way for people who visit this site to bet on sports matches around the globe that are actually fixed and their outcome has been previously determined. Maybe for some of you this isn't scary, but for me, a guy who literally runs his own YouTube channel / podcast about the Toronto Blue Jays baseball team, my channel's called Blue Jays Today, feel free to check it out, just a mildly shameless plug. But anyways, for me and for sports fans in general, this is some pretty serious stuff. For the longest time, fixed sports games have been something that the public has speculated upon. The authorities who run said sports games have vehemently denied such allegations, but this fixed match buy-in proves that these allegations are real. The Thought Catalog says that the FMBI fixes matches with at least a 2-to-1 payout. It also requires a $20,000 minimum buy-in, with 50% of your winnings going toward the site's service fees, though after the fixed match, the $20,000 buy-in is then returned to your Bitcoin account and everyone wins except for the athletes. Although FMBI cannot prove its authenticity, as doing so would require to reveal transaction details or match information that could jeopardize their network, they claim to be quite busy with weekly matches in several different sports. They say that they're involved in multiple sports, but the one that has the most potential is probably European football. For the longest time, people have believed that the league owners have a say in how things play out and who comes out on top. The nature of the sport makes it one of the easiest ones to tamper with, considering how subjective penalties are and that most matches are usually decided by a single goal. As a sports fan, I hate the thought that matches might be fixed, but based on this, might have to come to terms with it. Also, side note, but comment down below if you guys are a sports fan and the team that you support. Would love to hear. Number 4 on this list is cheap swatting service. Swatting, according to Thought Catalog, is the act of obtaining a victim's IP address and then anonymously and falsely reporting a critical incident such as a bomb threat or hostage situation to that location. The SWAT team then arrives on scene, kicks down a few doors, and generally disrupts everyone's day while costing taxpayers thousands of dollars, and it's huge on YouTube right now. Though the affected have extended all the way to politicians and pop stars, most instigators and victims are gamers who get attacked as a result of a bitter online rivalry. Swatting is also a service that you can buy on the deep web through cheap swatting service. CSS offers 3 options for the customer: $5 for a mild situation, $10 for a little worse where they'll bring many people and raid them, and then $20 for the SWAT team to come and they can just do anything. Despite penalties of up to 25 years to life, stiff sentences for the convicted have done little to curb this growing trend. This is because swatters are able to keep risks and subsequently service prices low by relying on simple and difficult to trace methods of police contact. Disposable phones, phone number encryption, and internet call services such as Skype have all proven cheap and invaluable tools for the common swatter. I want to just emphasize what they said about the $20 option there, folks. They can do anything. A SWAT team will literally show up to your home, and if they perceive a threat, you could actually be killed. Any number of things could go wrong with this whole scenario. Not to mention that this is a horrible allocation of resources, and if an incident occurred where we actually did need the SWAT team while someone was swatting, then whoever actually needs them is going to be in serious trouble. This is also the perfect way to frame someone for a crime if you ever did want to do such a thing. Plant some evidence and then call the SWAT team in and bam, they're done. This is way too much power for a standard person to have and seems like a really dangerous way to spend 20 bucks. Number 3 on this list is Atlantic carding. The Thought Catalog writes, once again, roughly 11 million Americans fall victim to credit card theft each year. Atlantic Card isn't helping. AC is a service that sells credit card information, addresses, and social security numbers. The more money you're willing to spend, the better your info. Big spenders can even get access to business accounts and infinite credit cards with no limit. Price ranges between $5 and $80 depending on the depth of information sold. It's reasonable pricing for the potential destruction of a stranger's life. The site boasts a credit card validity rate upward of 95%, anonymous communication via PGP encryption, and untraceable Bitcoin transaction. But keep in mind, if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. Agencies have been known to stage sting operations on the deep web with fake sites, such as 2010's Carter Profit. It's that easy, guys. Just drop a few bucks, and with that, you can steal someone's identity and their credit card and put them in really serious debt. I'm so ignorant in regards to credit card theft and hacking and all the ins and outs of how it works, and I think that honestly makes this a little bit scarier. Like, the fact that there's just a whole site where you can buy someone's card for $80 seems kind of ridiculous. What if we get unlucky and the card that they buy happens to be you or me? Granted, they probably look at mine and think to themselves why they'd want such a sad looking thing, but that is a complete, total other story. Just be aware that somebody is just a click away from stealing your entire identity and totally altering your whole life. Number 2 on this list is the cookbook. During my research of the dark web, there were several stories about one site in particular that is especially gruesome and disgusting. It's a site dedicated to cooking, however, it doesn't use your conventional ingredients. Rather than how to cook a quality pork roast or a good steak, this site specifically looks on how to cook one thing: women. Yeah, that's right guys, this site is 100% dedicated to cooking females. Metro writes, the most disturbing site we found was a comprehensive guide for cooking women. We're not talking about a short joke here. This page had information on what body types to use for specific cuts, how to prepare these cuts, and how to cook the girl so she lives as long as possible. Now, I haven't actually seen exactly what this site is, and I'm honestly glad I haven't witnessed it in person because this is just next levels of sadistic stuff right here. We're talking about a full-on website that resembles something run by the Food Network except for humans. On this site, it said that you can find close to 100 different recipes. I think the scariest part about this is that it isn't a joke site either. This is a fully real site that takes itself seriously. And if the owners of this site take it seriously, then it also means that there are users who take it seriously and probably follow said recipes on a regular basis. It almost seems too sick and twisted to be real, but I'm sad to report that this is an actual thing that you could discover on the dark web.
In 5th place, we have high school. Ryan Draper and Tori Adamczyk were students at Pocatello High School in Idaho that were interested in films and decided to try to record their own. It starts off innocent enough with a frame showing a crowded high school hallway before cutting to the night of September 22nd. I believe we have the video, so you can see the transition for yourself right now. The two boys are in a car and you can overhear Brian saying, "We're here in this car." The time is 9:50, September 22nd, 2006. Unfortunately, we have the grueling task of killing our two friends and they're right in that house just down the street. Tori goes on to explain that they had already been hanging out with the soon-to-be victim that evening, Cassie Jo Stoddard, while she was, house-sitting for her aunt and uncle on Whispering Cliffs Drive in northeast Bannock County. Her boyfriend Matt Beckham had also been in attendance for the hangout, but went home before the unfortunate events. Cassie had given the friends a tour of the house, including the basement. She was house-sitting for her aunt and uncle. The four teens went into the living room to watch a movie, but the would-be criminals left before the film ended, claiming they wanted to watch a movie at the local movie theater instead. She was unaware that before the boys left, Brian had unlocked the basement door so that he and Tori could re-enter the house undetected. Sometime after leaving the house on Whispering Cliffs, the duo returned to the neighborhood, parked down the street, got out of their car, and put on costumes consisting of dark clothing, gloves, and white painted masks. The boys entered the house through the basement door that had been left unlocked, while the couple that was left there were watching television in the living room, as planned, intentionally making loud noises when they got downstairs in an unsuccessful attempt to lure the couple down there. When that didn't work, they found the circuit breaker and turned off the power in the house, hoping, one or two of them would come down to check the breaker, but that didn't work either, and they were freaking out upstairs. At approximately 10:30 p.m., Matt's mother picked him up, leaving Cassie at the house alone. He called Tori's cell phone to see where he and Brian were, and could barely hear him since he was whispering, so Matt assumed the boys were at the movie theater, as planned. Eventually, the boys went upstairs, armed with stabby implements, and attacked and ended the life of Cassie. Afterwards, they filmed their conversation. Why not? With Brian clearly stating that they just killed Cassie, just left her house, and that it wasn't a bleeping joke. He further elaborated on how he impaled her in the throat and saw her lifeless body. A lot of which nope, can't say that here. The footage in total is over half an hour, and it made me sick to my stomach to watch. Both boys were arrested on September 27th, 2006, and eventually received sentences of life imprisonment without parole. Good riddance. In 4th place, we have the elusive White Lady of Union Graveyard. Located in Connecticut, Lorraine Warren, one of our favorite people, used to often take walks through the cemetery in question, saying that it was one of the most haunted places around. Now her husband, Ed, caught the White Lady on camera on September 1st of 1990 at 2:40 a.m. during his 7th night in a row of filming at the cemetery. Determined to have footage as proof, and we can show some of that footage to you now. He described dark figures surrounding her, shapes that he described as wood ghosts that seemed to jump on her while they all argued. Who is this mysterious lady? Because I love a good spooky lady. It's believed she is Harriet Seeley, whose young son passed shortly after being born, and Harriet herself passing soon after. Legend believes she may have died in hopes of finding her son, and still wanders her final resting place searching him out. She's described as a young woman wearing a white dress with dark hair. Many who have witnessed her believe they have almost hit her with their vehicle, only to find no trace of her once they pull over. Others claim they have often seen her hovering slightly above the ground around the cemetery, going back and forth amongst different gravestones. In 1993, local firefighter Glenn Powell received a call about a transformer explosion and drove to the scene of the incident with a police officer and observed a female driver following closely behind him on the road. He remembers the night sky had turned pink, and the explosion emitted large amounts of electricity that made the hair in his arms stand up at a close distance. Glenn was driving along the road beside the cemetery when the officer seated next to him yelled, "Watch out!" In the middle of the road was a woman with long brown flowing hair and wearing a white Victorian nightgown. Glenn described seeing a surprised look on her face before slamming on the brakes, but was unable to avoid hitting her, describing it like hitting a brick wall with the back of his truck flying into the air and the policeman next to him being launched into the dashboard. The driver behind him jumped out of the car and helped the two men search the area of the crash to check on the woman, but she was gone. Glenn is quoted as saying there was no red fluid, there was no clothing, there was no body, there was nothing. The footage of the White Lady was considered lost for many years, never making its way to the internet until after the passing of the Warrens, when their son-in-law Tony found the tape in a lost corner and uploaded it here to the interwebs. Glad we've got it. In 3rd place, we have lake monster footage. In June of 2009, a cell phone video of a creature swimming in Lake Champlain near Oakledge Park in Burlington caught some attention. The nearly 2-minute long video, taken by Burlington resident Eric Olson, shows the creature moving across the mouth of the small cove and beach area at the park. At several points during the video, The whatever it is appears to raise its head about a foot or more above the water's surface. Other times, a portion of what appears to be a torso, several feet in length, can also be seen. Eric has been adamant in saying that he was simply filming the water when he noticed the cryptid and tried to zoom in on it. He says that anyone watching it can see that whatever it was moving both horizontally across the water and vertically, going under the surface and coming back up. He described it as looking very long, but not very wide. Now, Lauren Coleman is a cryptozoologist based in Portland, Maine, and said what Olsen filmed with his phone is the best evidence to date of what residents on both sides of Lake Champlain would prefer to call champ. He stated that the video should be forensically analyzed and broken down frame by an expert. Before that day, the best known champ evidence was a photo taken in 1977 by Sandra Mancy of Bristol while she was having a picnic on the lake with her family. The photo was verified as legitimate and later appeared in Time magazine and the New York Times. I'm sorry, who was gonna tell me there's oodles of evidence of a sea monster here in Canada? Yikes! In second place, we have stalker footage. Parasocial relationships are the incredibly terrifying, one-sided bond a fan or follower think they have with a public figure, and sadly can lead to scary stories. I'm speaking from experience, and this is one point I won't be elaborating on. Icelandic pop star Björk learned this, sadly, when an American fan sent her an explosive device in disguise and then, offed himself, leaving behind 22 hours of videotape. Ricardo Lopez was described by his peers as extremely bright, but dropped out of high school to become an artist. As well as the videotapes, he left behind an 803-page handwritten diary full of the musings of, someone embarrassed by his body and awkward around girls. Okay, but I'm not a killer. Ricardo escaped his life by reading about the glamorous world of celebrities, fixating on Björk as his muse that he created art around. But soon the fan love entered the gray area of obsession. And that's the danger zone of being a fan. He recorded himself talking to the camera, saying that being in love, having an infatuation is a euphoric feeling, and he was very happy. He had something to look forward to every day. The diary shows how the fantasy eventually turned, more and more consuming, and how Ricardo slowly became less and less anchored in reality. 3 years into his obsession, he read that Björk had a lover, and he wrote in his diary about his sadistic plans to inflict pain onto her. Ricardo constructed an explosive device using sulfuric acid and placed it inside a hollowed-out book, also forging a letter from her record company telling her the book was for a future project. We actually have footage of him building that device, and I'll let that play now. He managed to acquire the address for her London home and mailed the package off, in hopes that she would open it and it would explode right in her face. Ricardo went home, still savoring the drama after he mailed it off. One tape showed him saying to the camera, "It went off almost without a hitch. I'm shaking more and more, but I was real cool in there, just a little bit nervous." With his device now almost at Björk's doorstep, Lopez began the final act for his tape, taking his life. In his video, Ricardo said he knew many killers had families that were brutal, but said his own family was normal and kind, and he played Björk's music in the background. His last words were, "This is for you," before pulling the trigger. On the video, a kaboom noise rang out, but there was no visible fluids. Ricardo just groaned and fell out of frame. Police found his body 4 days after the incident and were able to stop the package 1 day before it caused the intended harm. On September 16th of 1996, police found the camera and a videotape labeled "The Last Day." Several other cassettes were also nearby, and personally, this is the scariest video for me today. I've watched enough Criminal Minds to know premeditated killings are a thing, but this is a whole other level of terrifying. Oh, people. In first place, we have the Paris Catacombs. For those who do not know, the catacombs are a series of underground tunnels that are located underneath Paris that were created during the late 18th century to help alleviate the city's cemetery shortage crises. Fun fact, there are approximately 6 million bodies buried in the catacombs alone, which, you're the one, that's a lot of ghosties. In recent times, however, the catacombs have become a popular place for urban explorers, who have dubbed themselves cataphiles. One significant example of this is a man who took some footage of the catacombs of Paris sometime in the early 1990s. I'll kick this off with a snippet now before I describe it. The footage, which was shot on a black and white video recorder, starts as rather unremarkable, with the man exploring around the catacombs, and hey, he even picks up a few bones along the way. Wouldn't recommend it, but he did. As the video goes on, however, the man begins to walk at a faster pace before breaking into a run and drops the camera before running off into the darkness. It landed in a puddle on its side, and that's where it stayed, as it filmed the man's feet running away. The point of view shot became disorienting as he ran, swinging from tunnel to tunnel, seeming to reflect his confusion about which one he should run down next. Sometime after that, the footage was found by a different group of cataphiles in one of the deepest areas of the catacombs, before being acquired by a documentarian by the name of Francis Friedland. He later presented the footage on the second episode of the ABC Family Show, Scariest Places on Earth, in the year 2000. Nobody has stepped up after the initial airing of the episode nearly 2 decades ago, including Friedland himself. Nobody has stepped up after the initial airing of the episode over 2 decades ago, including Friedland himself. No one knows what happened to the man in the video, or who he was to this day. In our 5th place position, we have my favorite creepy doll, Annabelle. Back when I was in high school, I actually got to portray her in a local haunted house, which was the beginning of my scare acting career. Hey, I promise I am quite terrifying if I want to be. I promise. For those of you who might be rolling their eyes right now, I'm going to refresh memories on the real Annabelle story. So feel free to cozy up and listen. Donna and Angie were student nurses and good friends who had decided to room together while in school. And for Donna's 28th birthday, her mom had gifted her a very large Raggedy Ann doll, something she was thrilled about. Personally, I'd react the same way. Let the record know that I'm always down to accept gifts of dolls or plushies. Soon after adopting the precious doll, Donna started to notice some weird behavior. She would leave Annabelle in her bed every morning behind her locked bedroom door, seating her the same way with her arms and legs crossed, and would come home at night to Annabelle having moved rooms and in positions that weren't possible. She's described a few instances of the doll kneeling, and speaking from experience, stuffed dolls can't kneel without falling for more than a few seconds. Donna and Angie then started finding notes left throughout the apartment, written on parchment paper in red pen, 2 things they didn't own. When Donna's boyfriend Lou started criticizing the doll, unexplainable handprints and scratches began appearing on his body. And that's when the girls made the decision to call a priest, who then brought in the Warrens. They were able to calm down the entity enough to remove it from the home and transport her to their museum, where she resides to this day. Now, the footage I'm talking about here is from the visitors who have visited Annabelle in her current residence over the years. If you look closely, you can just see the energy that's alive in her. Also, if she was never removed from her box until like the last few years, how is she able to change position ever so slightly from one video to the next? You tell me here. In 4th place, we have footage from a Buddhist exorcism. Known as parita, which can be translated as protection or safeguard, it refers to the Buddhist practice of reciting certain verses and scriptures in order to ward off misfortune or danger. The practice of reciting or listening to the parita suttas began very early in the history of Buddhism. The Mahavamsa contains the earliest historical reference to this practice, describing how Upatissa I instructed monks to recite the Ratana Sutta throughout the night during a period when Sri Lanka was afflicted by plague and diseases. In the Pali literature, these short verses are recommended by the Buddha as providing protection from certain afflictions. The belief in the effective power to heal or protect of the Sakakariya, or asseveration of something quite true, is an aspect of the work ascribed to the Parita. It is also widely believed that all-night recitations of Parita by monks bring safety, peace, and well-being to a community. Parita discourses can be recited at events like a funeral or on the death anniversary of a loved one, and can also be recited to placate antagonistic spirits. In 1987, Ed and Lorraine took a trip to Japan to offer their expertise in some cases that were ongoing in different parts of the country, with one of their stops being to a Buddhist temple. Describing everyone they encountered as lovely, Ed and Lorraine were shocked when they came upon not one, but 2 people under possession. Ed described one as being under the influence of a snake demon, as they slithered around the floor constantly, with their tongue darting in and out of their mouth. The possessed people were blindfolded, so the demons couldn't witness the rites, as the Buddhas went through the rituals and chanted around them. After the spirits were cast out, a bonfire was built to help guide them towards the afterlife. The footage we see is from a later round of prayers, which was held because one of the sets of spirits refused initially to depart from her attached soul. You can hear Lorraine attempting to guide the spirit out with the aid of a translator, coaxing Teresa to go on to the light and fly away, that her family was no longer here. In 3rd place, we have the elusive White Lady of Union Graveyard. Some believe she is Harriet Seeley, whose young son passed shortly after being born, and Harriet herself passing soon afterwards. Legend believes she may have died in hopes of finding her son, and still wanders their final resting place searching him out. While others believe she is the ghost of a woman from the 1940s who killed her husband and later herself and is doomed to wander the graveyard. You tell me which one you believe. Her physical description is the one thing that remains consistent. She is a young woman wearing a white dress with dark hair. Thank goodness I'm not wearing white today. It seems as if she enjoys scaring the daylights out of the living, which, hey, my kind of gal. Many who have witnessed her believe they have almost hit her with their vehicle, only to find no trace of her once they pull over, while others claim they have often seen her hovering slightly above the ground around the cemetery, going back and forth amongst different gravestones. In 1993, local firefighter Glenn Powell received a call about a transformer explosion and drove to the scene of the incident with a police officer and observed a female driver following closely behind him on the road. He remembers the night sky had turned pink, my favorite color, and the explosion emitted large amounts of electricity that had made the hair on his arm stand up at a close distance. Glenn was driving along the road beside the cemetery when the officer seated next to him yelled, "Watch out!" In the middle of the road was a woman with, you guessed it, long brown flowing hair and wearing a white Victorian nightgown. down. Glenn described seeing a surprised look on her face before slamming on the brakes, but was unable to avoid hitting her, describing it like hitting a brick wall, with the back of his truck flying into the air and the policeman next to him being launched into the dashboard. The driver behind him jumped out of the car and helped the two men search the area of the crash to check on the woman. Glenn is quoted as saying, "There was no red bodily fluids, there was no clothing, there was nobody, there was nothing." Located in Connecticut, Lorraine used to often take walks through the cemetery, saying that it was one of the most haunted places around. Ed caught the white lady on camera on September 1st, 1990 at 2:40 a.m., his 7th night in a row of filming at the cemetery, determined to have footage as proof, and we can show some of that footage to you now. He described dark figures surrounding her, shapes that he said were wood ghosts that seemed to jump on her while they all argued. In second place, we have the Amityville Horror. On November 13th of 1974, Ronald DeFeo Sr., his wife, and 4 of their offspring, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John, had their lives ended by a firearm inside their home in suburban Amityville, New York. And at the time, homicide detectives claimed it was the largest number of victims in a single slaying on Long Island. The deceased were found in their nightclothes and were shot in the back, apparently while they were asleep. There were no signs of a struggle inside the home, where a sign hanging outside the main entrance read, "High hopes." Sure. The killings were reported by the only surviving member of the family, the oldest son, Ronald. He told the police that he arrived at the home shortly after 6 p.m. but found the front door locked, so he crawled into the house through a window and stumbled across the icky scene. He later confessed that he had ended the lives of his family around 3:30 a.m., acting out the scenes for detectives as he described how he took out his family one by one, with the weapon eventually being found in Amityville Creek. Ronald's trial began in October of 1975. His defense attorney, William Weber, tried to make a case that the defendant, who allegedly heard voices, was innocent by reason of insanity, but the court eventually sentenced him to 6 concurrent 25-year to life sentences. Try saying that 5 times fast. Eesh. A year later, the Lutz family moved into the now abandoned home, and that's where this goes from simply tragic to much, much more. Most of the DeFeo family's furniture was still in the house, because it was included for $400 as part of the deal. You know what, I'd take that deal too. A friend of George Lutz, the father of the family, had learned about the history of the house and insisted on having it blessed, and at the time, George was a non-practicing Methodist and had no experience of what this would entail. Kathy, the mom, was a non-practicing Catholic and explained the process to him. George knew a Catholic priest named Father Mancuso who agreed to carry out the house blessing. He arrived to perform the blessing while George and Kathy were unpacking their belongings on the afternoon of December 18th, 1975, and went into the home to carry out the rites. When he flicked the first amount of holy water and began to pray, he heard a masculine voice demand that he get out. When leaving the house, the priest did not mention this incident to either George or Kathy until December 24th, when he called George and advised him to stay out of the second-floor room where he had heard the mysterious voice, which happened to be the former bedroom of Mark and John DeFeo that Kathy had planned to use as a sewing room, but the call was cut short by static. Following his visit to the house, the father allegedly developed a high fever and blisters on his hands, similar to stigmata. At first, George and Kathy experienced nothing unusual in the house, but the horrors that happened over the next 28 days were awful for the Lutz family, bearing witness to slime pouring out of their walls, strange odors throughout the home, and George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which is right around the time Ron DeFeo carried out his original crimes. A garage door would open and close on its own, an invisible spirit knocked a knife down in the kitchen, a pig-like creature with red eyes was reported staring at George and his son Daniel through a window. Also, Kathy and 2 of her children experienced bouts of levitation while trying to sleep. The footage we have from this heinous month is of a boy with glowing eyes, believed to be the spirit of the late John DeFeo. By mid-January of 1976, after another attempt at a house blessing by George and Kathy, they experienced what would be their final night in the house. Now, the Lutzes were never able to give a full account of the events that took place on this occasion, describing them as too frightening. After getting in touch with Father Mancuso, the Lutzes decided to take some belongings and stay at Kathy's mother's house in nearby Deer Park, New York, until they had sorted out the problems with the house. They claimed the phenomena followed them there, describing greenish-black slime coming up the staircase towards them. Yeah, no thanks. And finally, in first place, we have footage of an American exorcism. While the video is blurred out on YouTube to protect the identity of the poor girl, I personally think it's up there as one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. At an hour and 20 minutes long, it depicts a Catholic bishop in Connecticut attempting to converse with a demonic entity that has possessed the body of an innocent young woman, while her family restrains her. Ed and Lorraine were the ones to alert the church to the possession after meeting her during an audience chat session that was held at the conclusion of one of their public presentations. During portions of the exorcism, when prayer is done, you can hear the demon acting wildly, and it originally refuses to give its name, both of which are quite common in cases of demonic possession. Eventually, we learn that there are 4 demons possessing our victim, with one of them identifying themselves as Robert, which happens to be a name associated with the son of Satan.
Number 5, The Blair Witch Project. I remember seeing this when I was like 10, and I'm not gonna lie, it kind of scared the shit out of me. It still does. It tripped me out because like back then my parents were like, oh, don't worry honey, this is made up, after like every scary movie we watched. But this time they were like, was that real? You know, my dad just sat there quiet thinking. I was scared. Because the whole production apparently did such an amazing job from top to tail of its release, making the audience still feel like it really happened. The Blair Witch Project is probably the most famous found footage movie ever made. The campaign tactic was that the viewers were told through missing persons posters and that the characters were missing while researching in the woods for this mythical Blair Witch. Their IMDb page even listed the actors as missing and presumed deceased in the first year of the film's release. Even the film's website contained actors posing as investigators giving testimonies about their evidence. They even shared childhood photos of the 3 leads to add a sense of realism. By August 1999, the website had received 160 million hits and the movie went from a flop at midnight to the top worldwide. During screenings, the filmmakers made advertising efforts to promote the events in the film as factual, including the distribution of flyers at all of the film festivals such as Sundance and Cannes, asking viewers to come forward with any information about the missing students. All the actors making their feature film debuts as well were described as missing and presumed dead. The actors' parents even started receiving condolence calls and sympathy letters. The actors got to witness the movie blow up, but they weren't even invited to the screenings due to the publicity. Imagine not being able to go see your own premiere, or even really celebrate your huge role in this huge successful movie. It's kind of sad for the actors, don't you think? I think it is. Number 4, The Bay. Of course, if you like what we do here on Top 5 Scary, throw us a thumbs up down below or comment which one of these real-ish movies scared you the most. The Bay is a 2012 American mockumentary horror film directed by Barry Levinson and written by Michael Wallach. The movie's basically about a small town getting infected with a contaminated water source that 2 oceanographers discovered in the bay without saying anything. After investigating fish being eaten from the inside out, they realize that the culprit is this tongue-eating louse creature that looks like the bugs from like Starship Troopers. Yeah, really scary. The movie came out as a result of a documentary Levinson was asked to produce about real problems facing the Chesapeake Bay. Although Levinson chose to abandon the documentary upon learning that it was already being covered by a huge news network organization. Levinson instead decided to use all that research to produce this horror film, which he hoped would shed light on the issues facing Chesapeake Bay. As such, when promoting the film, he noted that more than 80% of the film is real and actually factual information. Also, 80% is so real that it had to wait to be released and cleared first. What? Yeah, this was like a real issue, hence the confusion around the found footage. Apparently this nuclear disaster monster giant isopod in the bay aren't real, but the small isopods filmed are very real. You see a tight shot of the isopod, Levinson said. That's not CGI, that's real. We just pulled that out of the Atlantic Ocean. The isopods do this really gruesome thing, which the bay does a great example of, is that they eat the fish from inside out. All that stuff is actually factual. A leaking nuclear reactor actually does have a runoff heading towards the Chesapeake Bay. Its quantities aren't great, but the fact that it's actually happening seems scary enough. The chicken farm runoff stuff is actually factual too. At the end of the day, yes, it's a movie, not a documentary, but it's infused with a lot of things that are really real. I think it adds to the nature of the piece, end quote. Hey, spoken like a true artist. And that's why the film has gotten so many great reviews. Give it a watch, very spooky, very well done. Number 3, the Poughkeepsie Tapes. Writer-director Fam Jam duo John Eric and Drew Dowdle are best known for their sinister yet impeccable found footage movies. Yeah, it's pretty gory and actually had to wait 10 years before being released due to the graphic footage on it. It's rumored that it was held for 10 years due to its contents and disturbing atmosphere, referring to it as a banned movie. It's likely that MGM felt audiences weren't really ready to see such graphic content. In an abandoned house in Poughkeepsie, New York, murder investigators uncover hundreds of tapes showing decades of a deranged killer's work. And in an all too realistic found footage mockumentary, the moments showing the killer POV are things of nightmares. I'm not gonna lie. This is like the goriest movie on our list today. But with scary movies, sometimes comes a little gore, you know? The Poughkeepsie Tapes plays out as a faux documentary following the discovery of a very large collection of VHS tapes created by said deranged psychopath, and the investigations that follow. The documentary is well shot and played out in a believable manner. Sometimes the acting is a little, yeah, this is really fake. And then sometimes it's like, okay, I'm gonna look up if that guy's a real cop. The feel of this movie is gore, gore, gore. If you're into like Saw type stuff and multiple victims and lots of popcorn syrup, this one's definitely for you. These tapes are only fictional, but there's a small catch. According to Marist College, the Poughkeepsie tapes may be based on an actual event. A killer named Kendall Francois killed 8 to 10 people in Poughkeepsie in the late 90s, but didn't videotape the murders. There's heavy debate in the film industry on which movies are depicting actual cases similar to actual reports, and acts that are totally staged and made up. Number 2, The Quiet Ones. The Quiet Ones is a 2014 British supernatural horror film directed by John Pogue, based on a very real 1972 parapsychology experience called The Philip Experiment, conducted in Toronto. It stars Jared Harris as a U of T professor attempting to prove that poltergeists are actually real manifestations of the human psyche and not actually supernatural beings. The movie is very scary, no doubt about it. Jared Harris is amazing, as always, but the real story behind it is actually way more terrifying. The professors of mathematics, science, and psychology created a fictitious character through an attempt to communicate with said fictitious entity through a controlled seance. It was the real deal. The character created and agreed upon was named Philip during the test. His fictional backstory coincided with real historic events and places, but with multiple contradictions and errors. They said he was born in 1624 in England, had an early military career, knighted by 16, in the English Civil War, and eventually dying at the age of 30. The group was seated around a table via a lecture, with initial seances yielding no contact, no communication, and no phenomenon. The professors then dimmed the lights, fully leaned into the seance, changing the environment. Participants and students then began feeling a presence. Lots of table vibrations, breezes, unexplained voices, and sounds which matched responses to Philip's life. Audio and video and witness accounts documented the paranormal event, but Philip never actually appeared. Yo, this actually happened, like down the street from us. This is terrifying. And number 1, Ghost Watch 1992. First broadcast on BBC One Halloween night 1992. Written by Stephen Volk and directed by Leslie Manning, the drama was produced for an actual BBC anthology series. Despite having been recorded only weeks in advance, the narrative was presented as a live television broadcast. During and following its first and only UK television broadcast, the show resulted in an estimated 1 million separate phone calls to the BBC that night, dealing with a mixture of complaints and praise for the program's bizarre release. Yeah, Ghost Watch has never been repeated on UK television. It's been replayed on stations such as the Canadian channel Scream for Halloween once in 2004, and the Belgian channel Canvas in 2008. The hour-and-a-half event was shot documentary style and appeared as part of the BBC. It involved actual BBC reporters performing a live on-air investigation of a so-called haunted house in London in which demonic poltergeists activity was taking place. Through found footage and interviews with family living there, they discovered the existence of a violent ghost nicknamed Pipes, a nickname from their kids. Footage actually showed the police arriving at Foxhill Drive, and the spirit even dragged a BBC host behind a door. Yeah, that is horrifying. Imagine watching your weekly hosts on like a reliable television network that's censored and archived, and then all of a sudden the host just gets yanked up the wall by a supposed demon live on TV. Number 5, Phoenix Forgotten. Phoenix Forgotten is a 2017 American found footage sci-fi horror directed by Justin Barber in his directorial debut and written by him and T.S. Nolan. Produced by Ridley Scott, the Ridley Scott. The film tells the story of the disappearance of 3 teenagers who set out to find the source of a widely reported 1997 UFO phenomenon known famously as, you guessed it, the Phoenix Lights. We all remember this, don't we? Okay, now the plot. Sophie Bishop and her boyfriend visit Sophie's parents' place in Phoenix, Arizona on the 20th anniversary of her brother's disappearance. In 1997, the family all witnessed the Phoenix Lights during Sophie's 6th birthday, which was, drumroll please, recorded. Several strange lights appear in a formation over the city before being chased by fighter jets. The family is convinced that they have witnessed UFOs via the old recordings, and Sophie now begins to dig a little bit deeper. In the tapes, Sophie's brother Josh begins investigating the Phoenix Lights with the help of his friends Ashley and Mark. Sophie interviews multiple parties regarding the trio's disappearance and the sightings in '97, only to find the group's abandoned car and a camera and one single tape. Sophie views the tape, obviously, showing the beginning of the group's epic journey to find out what caused the Phoenix Lights. We then see what eventually ensues of the poor trio in a horror movie about aliens. Yeah, shocker, right? Or who knows, maybe it has a happy ending. I like this movie a lot for obvious reasons, but it's like really fun, and I like the dated feel with the tapes, you know? As always, dudes, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, throw us a thumbs up down below or even leave us a comment, you know? Number 4, Antrim. Antrim is supposed to be the deadliest movie ever made, and that's what it claims. It's like a fever dream, this movie. Again, not real, but supposedly real. You know? It's a movie. Antrim is proudly a 2018 Canadian horror film. Woo! Go Canada. Written and directed by David Amito and Michael Lacini, the film is divided into 2 parts, an opening and a closing narrative in the form of a mockumentary and a feature film. The mockumentary loosely tells the story of Antrim, a movie released in the late 70s that supposedly had effects on those who watched it. The bulk of the movie then is just kinda moment to moment what kinda happened. Antrim was developed by Amito and Lacini during the development of a separate project in which they were brainstorming scenarios that scared them. Their central idea would later become the basis of Antrim. This idea and concept of what it would be like to watch a supposed, quote, real cursed film. The filmmakers felt like it would make a great horror film, which it does. For the film's occult aspects, the writers studied multiple historical depictions of demons and the devil. It stars Nicole Tompkins and child actor Rowan Smith. Antrim made its world premiere at the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival in October 2018 and was nominated for several awards festival to festival. Uncorked Entertainment acquired North American distribution rights, releasing it on video on demand and pretty well all streaming services since like 2019. It received great reviews who praised its uncomfortable atmosphere, its uncomfortable acting, and creativity. Yeah, they kind of nailed it with this one. It's so 70s. Like, it feels like, again, a fevered night terror. Number 3, As Above, So Below. As Above, So Below is a 2014 American horror film written and directed by John Eric Dowdle and co-written by his brother Drew. The title refers to the popular paraphrase of the second verse of the Emerald Tablet. The film is presented to the audience as found footage, following a documentary's crew's experience exploring the catacombs of Paris. The film was produced by Legendary Pictures and distributed by Universal. The film received negative reviews from critics, but grossed more than $40 million with a huge profit from only a $5 million budget. The plot. Scarlett Marlowe is a scholar continuing her past father's research for the Philosopher's Stone. Scarlett travels to Paris with 2 friends, and using codes from her research, they solve a riddle leading them with coordinates to the catacombs of Paris. They sneak underground and the group wanders the caves. They encounter cultists, ghosts, visions, you name it. They find a Templar, Assassin's Creed looking tomb and see and read some pretty jarring stuff. Statues in the walls come to life, and it goes all Indiana Jones, but like scary. The car scene? Like, yeah, what's that about? That's horrifying and downright disturbing. Dude, this movie is gonna leave you gasping for air, literally. But I really liked this movie. It's shot GoPro style, and I love that humid, dingy cave stuff. Look one way in the dark and then the other way. Yeah, I'm just sweating thinking about that scene. Number 2, The Taking of Deborah Logan. It's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, I'm not gonna lie. This movie is horrifying. If you're down for like old witchy ghost lady vibes on a Friday night, and you like jump scares, we got a winner, folks. A 2014 gem. This American found footage supernatural horror film is a first for the director Adam Robidoux, who co-wrote the screenplay. Set in Virginia, it tells the story of a documentary crew making a film about Alzheimer's patients who uncover something sinister while documenting one woman. The film was released right around Halloween time, and you can still catch this on like every streaming service. A team of students who want to create a documentary about Deborah Logan, an elderly woman who has Alzheimer's, films and records her daily life. Then Deb starts to act a little bizarre. They notice that her actions defy normal explanations and express something a little bit more supernatural. Things escalate after they record an audio of Deborah talking about sacrifices and snakes. Oh yeah, like real witchy old lady vibes, I'm telling you. After some talk about an ancient ritual that makes people immortal, some dark cultist kind of stuff, and voila, Deb goes on a spree and tries to kidnap them all. They find out that she has quite the sinister history and that maybe she's not a really good fit for the star of a documentary, more like the star of an exorcism. Yeah, like that kind of stuff, you know? GoPro, night visions, old lady witchy standing in dark corners, good old fashioned thrillers, you know? Good for the whole family, right before bedtime, in the dark. And the number one spot, of course, is The Visit. This movie's kind of like the last movie, with all the witchy vibes, but like way more subtle and way more terrifying. Yeah, I don't like when there's like creepy shit just running around in the background shots, right? Like, that's what scares me the most, the background shots. The Visit is a 2015 American found footage comedy horror film written, produced, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. The film centers around two young siblings, teenager Becca and her kid brother Tyler, who live with their mother, who's had a pretty gruesome past herself. After finding their grandchildren online and wanting to meet them, the kids' grandparents invite them to spend a week at their farmhouse. Aw, how nice. Like a little Hansel and Gretel type stuff. Exactly. The film was released by Universal Pictures and it grossed about $100 million worldwide, against only a $5 million production budget, so yeah, this one killed it. Good job, guys. But it got mixed reviews though. I don't really know why. This movie's like really scary and well done. The plot. The kiddies are getting ready for a 5-day overnighter at the grandparents while their mother Loretta goes on a cruise as a much needed break. Loretta reveals that she has not spoken to her parents for like 15 years. The teens plan to record a documentary film about their visit using a camcorder. It's shot kind of GoPro style with some classic camera falls on the floor, what's in the background type fun. I'm not going to spoil anything in this movie, but if you like screaming things, crawling around all in the middle of the night, yeah, then this movie's definitely worth a watch. Number 5, Incantation. Apparently right now it's the ranking for the most watched non-English horror film worldwide, with over 10 million hours watching and rising. That's pretty sick right there, starting off, you know? Obviously I couldn't leave this one off the list with a reputation like that, so here we go. Incantation is a 2022 Taiwanese found footage supernatural horror film directed by Kevin Ko and co-written by Kevin and Chang Shi-wei. Released in Taiwan March 18th, 2022, it became the highest grossing Taiwanese horror film ever made. Yeah, it's received international distribution from Netflix. Hey, Netflix, so good. Since July 8th, 2022. Here's the plot. A woman named Lee Ronan narrates the film, imploring the audience to memorize an insignia and chant an incantation to bless them and lift a curse on her 6-year-old daughter Dodo. The insignia and incantation are interspersed frequently throughout the film to encourage the viewer to pray along with it. Yeah, it's pretty horrifying. Ronan, her boyfriend Dom, and Dom's cousin Yuan break a religious taboo while documenting a ritual for their internet channel. They go to a remote village of Dom and Yuan's relatives who practice a religion worshipping an ancestral deity called Mother Buddha. The clan asks the three to submit their names with the incantation to Mother Buddha. And here we go. That night, the group spy on the clan performing a ritual where a young girl seems to be willingly prepared for sacrifice. The girl, whose body is covered completely head to toe in runes, was left in front of a tunnel which the clan said is forbidden. Ronan waits for the girl while Dom and Yuan enter the tunnel. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's not good. Yuan later emerges screaming and Dawn seemingly lifeless. Ronan and Dodo's house soon becomes infested by unexplained ghostly activities and Dodo is disturbed by a shadowy presence. They bring her to a shrine where a priest agrees to exorcise Dodo. Yunan later becomes possessed and sends copies of the tunnel footage. That's horrifying. Yeah. Just Chuck Liddelling yourself on a computer desk. Yeah, you're definitely gonna need a Tylenol after that one. Ouch. The film ends with some audience participation, and I'm not gonna spoil anything, don't worry, but after watching this, I kinda understand why it's rated what it's rated. Yeah, very scary, but also really good. As always, dudes, if you like what we do here too, hit the like button or leave us a comment down below. Which 2022 horror film has you hiding behind the covers? Number 4, Horror in High Desert. Horror in High Desert is a 2021 American film written, produced, and directed by Dutch Marriott in a pseudo-documentary format featuring found footage elements about the mysterious disappearance of a hiker in Nevada. An experienced outdoorsman vanishes in North Nevada while on an outdoor excursion. On the 3-year anniversary of his disappearance, his friends and loved ones recall the events leading up to the disappearance and for the first time speak about what they think actually happened. The first part focuses on the police report of hiker Gary Hinge. Toward the end of July 2017, Gary hiked to an unspecified area in the Mojave Desert, and the police conduct a search based on the last GPS of location on Gary's cell phone. As time goes by, the media stop reporting, and a private investigator named Bill is asked to investigate so that the case would not be abandoned. The investigation then focuses on clues in the last of the published videos. Gary appears in frame from his home, narrating a very unusual experience. The footage found reveals that Gary was able to find his way back to some mystery cabin. There he hears chanting that seems to be human-like, and he eventually is attacked and the camera stops recording. Reporter and the private investigator speculate that who or what might have attacked the hiker. It is mentioned that the police have made this footage public in the hope that someone in the audience might offer some additional clues, which spark a series of theories such as Area 51, atomic testing, satanic rituals, and of course, extraterrestrials. Yeah, that's absolutely horrifying. I didn't even see that thing. They really do a good job at involving the audience in the experience by asking them to help continue the search, which makes the film seem so real but not real at the same time, you know? Hey, great film. And I say aliens, that was definitely an alien, you know? I'm the alien guy, I'm just saying. Number 3, Dashcam. Dashcam is a 2021 computer screen horror film directed by Rob Savage and written by Gemma Hurley, Jed Shepard, and Savage. The entire film is shot from the perspective of the main character's handheld iPhone or the Dashcam in her car as she live streams her actions for viewers whose comments are displayed. Kinda hard to read and watch at the same time, but it really makes it scarier, trust me. The film, of course, is produced by Blumhouse Productions, so you know it's gonna slap. Dashcam premiered at the 2021 Toronto International Film Festival in September 2021, where it was named second runner-up for the People's Choice Award. The plot: Annie Hardy is a right-wing internet personality who live streams from her car, making music and using her viewers' comments as lyrics. Tired of COVID-19 restrictions and homelessness in Los Angeles, Annie books a flight to London. There, she pays a visit to her former bandmate Stretch, who now works as a delivery driver. When she arrives at the restaurant, Annie is surprised to find it abandoned before she encounters the owner, who offers Annie huge money to apparently transport an old woman, Angela, to an undisclosed location. Annie accepts the offer, of course, and drives with Angela while live streaming everything to her fans. And this is where it gets terrifying. Angela then vanishes into a nearby forest, and the group find her standing atop of a tree, to which Angela just floats down to the ground before attacking the group, showing them her supernatural abilities. Angela hunts them down, and after a terrifying scene that I'm not going to spoil, a humanoidish creature emerges out of Angela, where it now hunts for Annie.
Okay, Angela, this lady's gonna just take you to some friends, okay?
Nope.
Yeah, I would be saying a big nope, too. Hell no, I'm not driving some scary old lady in the middle of the night. That's like rookie horror film nonsense right there. Great movie though, great movie. Very scary. Number 2, Spree. Spree is a 2020 American comedy horror film directed by Eugene Kotlyarenko. The gonzo-style satire follows a social media-obsessed rideshare driver played by Joe Keery, who we all love. In an attempt to become viral, he live streams himself murdering his passengers. Ooh, it's a challenge of a role, I'd say. The film also stars David Arquette, Kyle Mooney, and Misha Barton. It was executively produced by Drake. That's saying something right there. Spree premiered in 2020 at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival and was released theatrically on video on demand in 2020. The film received mixed reviews, though critics praised Keery's performance and the film's premise. I really like this movie. I think it's a good representation of 2020 culture, you know? With phones in our hand every second, everybody trying to go viral, doing anything you can for clout. This movie does just that. Okay. Here's the plot. A young man named Kurt is obsessed with being a social media star and becoming viral. Kurt finds work as a driver for a rideshare app called Spree, then fits out his car with cameras and begins a new live stream titled The Lesson, where he instructs viewers on how to become famous on social media. Kurt starts picking up passengers one by one and killing them off with poison that he politely offers riders, as well as a bunch of creative clout-chasing, performance heinous acts. You'll see. Kurt is then stopped by 2 police officers who grow suspicious of him. It's revealed that Kurt's murders have already become public, with Kurt being nicknamed the Rideshare Killer. After police are unable to identify him, Kurt tries to flee, but he too is pursued by police, forcing him to crash his car through a homeless camp. With Kurt's murders becoming more well known online, Spree is temporarily shut down to allow an investigation to take place. Kurt tries to kill Jesse, the other character, but she pins him to the wall with her car and then in turn takes his phone and continues the social media presence which he started. Jesse then becomes a nationwide star after taking credit for Kurt's demise and capture surrounding the infamous rideshare killer. Yeah, I really like this movie. It's like super campy and over the top. It's serious at times, but also very gory. Joe Keery kills it with this role, and I feel like if you were needing a break from that Stranger Things character, yeah, we found it. You did very well, my friend. Very terrifying. And coming in at the #1 spot, VHS 94. VHS 94 is a 2021 American found footage horror anthology film and the 4th installment in the VHS series. If you haven't seen these movies, they're great. Give them a shot. They're almost shot like a bunch of stories from the same era in one film. Like little mini true or false found footage movies that make the audience ask, is this campy or did this really happen? The film originates from a screenplay written by David Bruckner and Brad Miska. The overarching plot follows a police SWAT team who stumble upon a sinister cult compound and its collection of VHS tapes and what's on them. Following this series' cult origins around film festivals, VHS 94 has its world premiere at Fantastic Fest on September 26, 2021 and was also screened at the Beyond Fest on October 4th the same year. The film was released as a Shudder original film via Shudder, October 6, 2021, and later that month, Shudder announced that it had become the platform's biggest movie premiere in its history, with record-breaking viewership numbers. That's awesome. Horror movies? Let's go. It's great stuff. These films are awesome. Okay, here's some plots. A SWAT team gets a tip and investigates a prison cell-like haunted house with various static screens playing different found footage. The first is a Channel 6 news reporter, Holly Marciano, and her cameraman, Jeff. They are filming a story about the Rat Man, a local legend who has supposedly been living in the town's storm drains. After interviewing several citizens who have reportedly witnessed the creature to gain information, the duo descend into the storm drain where they find several homeless encampments. Where they find several homeless encampments. While filming, they are approached by a man covered in black goop slime, and he murmurs, "Ratma." They attempt to flee, but they are captured by other similar residents of the sewers. Yeah, I'm not gonna spoil anything else because I really like the VHS series and the mini stories that they do. They're absolutely terrifying. The vampire part is the scariest part. I'm not spoiling anything. Check it out.
Number 5 on this list is the alien baby. This is a clip of what looks like an alien child. We know how the government is with aliens and anything extraterrestrial, so it's clear why they wouldn't want the public looking at something like this too closely. I mean, they don't let anyone in on anything happening in any of their secret bases, so it makes sense they wouldn't want us watching a video like something like this. Let's show 30 seconds of this clip and you guys comment down below what the heck this thing is.
Now, how are you feeling? You feeling okay? You feel well? Go and get you something? Want a glass of water? We're not really getting anywhere, are we, at the moment? Are you seeing something? Is there something you see over there?
So very clearly that is not a human child. Now it's possible that could be an animal of some kind, but I have no idea what type of animal looks like that. That's why if I had to guess, we're looking at some type of alien creature. This is a really interesting find because it means that aliens might have children similar to how we have children. Obviously we don't know the process to how this baby came about, but the idea that aliens grow like we grow. That's important information because for a long time people have speculated on their reproductive process. To just assume that they grow like we grow would be ignorant on our part, but now this looks like some serious evidence. What I want to see though is a clip of this creature several years from now. What does this thing look like then? It doesn't look too threatening today, but you already know that it's going to turn into something deadly most likely. Number 3 on this list is the river creature. This next video was released back in 2015 and shows a bunch of people wearing hazmat suits picking a strange looking creature out of a river. This was apparently captured in Poland and there was no official report on this when it came out. So as we can see, there is a bunch of people with hazmat suits picking up this weird creature from the river. What is that creature, and why do they need to be wearing these hazmat suits for? So they hand it off to some other people in different colored hazmat suits and then walk to a place where presumably the person filming can't go. I also wouldn't be surprised if the person filming was already in a spot where they weren't allowed to be and just snuck in anyways. Maybe this is in some secret base of some kind where experiments are being performed. I mean, why else would they need hazmat suits? Definitely a very strange one there, guys. Comment down below if you have any idea what they were doing here and what that thing was. And number 1 on this list is the creepy creature. The video that I'm going to show you was uploaded by Keenan Music to YouTube on May 7th, 2021. It's a very short clip, only 15 seconds long, of someone investigating Japan using Google Earth and discovering something super creepy and weird. An unexplained object is going to be flying in the sky over top of a Japanese city. Let's roll the clip now. That thing almost looks like a drone, but it also looks like it could be made from organic material. I also don't know of any drones that look like that are constructed by humans. Could this be something from another planet that made its way to Earth undetected and is scoping out our world? I think everything is on the table with something like this, and some investigation desperately needs to get done. Comment down below what you think this could be and why nothing official has been released on it yet.